You are listening to the 2 and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
Come on, that guy's having dinner on the tailgate of the truck in the field of wheat at 1 o'clock. Yeah, I said dinner at 1 p.m.
Dinner's at noon. All you weirdos that have dinner at 6 o'clock, it's pretty late.
Grab some poutine and a double-double. It's time for the 2 and Out CFL podcast.
Now they have to kick it out, and they do!
Every week, Travis Currah.
Does anybody still care about this podcast?
And Brazilian Ty.
Hunters are people, too.
Talk fantasy football, bring you the latest in CFL news, and sprinkle in a little bit of nonsense.
Are you kidding? This is unbelievable!
Ready, set, hunt!
And we are a part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. I'm Travis Currah. He is Brazilian Ty, and the Calgary Stampede is underway. Mm-hmm. I know you were watching the Chuck Wagons. How'd your bets do, buddy? I know you bet on it.
I lost $16 tonight.
Well, not so bad.
We did skins format, so it was a toonie race with carryovers. We only picked 3 winners tonight, and I picked the 1 barrel in heats 1 and 3, and both guys finished 4th. So I was off to a rip-roaring start early on.
Well, Ty, have you ever been to the Stampede?
Not to the Stampede, no. You know how much I love big crowds, though.
They're the best.
Oh, yeah, they're the best. My God.
I feel like 2 and Out on the Midway would actually be a great feature.
I don't like rides, though. But if we're going to go play over under 7 like we did when we were 14 again.
Was that even legal?
No.
Aw.
They had no problem taking our money. They didn't care.
Let's go through week 4.
Join 2 and Out for CFL Fantasy and CFL Pick'em, and show Currah and Ty what you got.
They are who we thought they were!
Just click cflfantasy.tsn.ca.
Enough from talking about it. There has to be consequences.
And pick'em.cfl.ca.
Well, the week started with the Montreal Alouettes beating the Hamilton Tiger Cats 36-29. I am pretty sure that let's say about 98% of everybody's pick'em was messed up after this game, because you know what? I know even the most diehard Montreal Alouettes fans were probably dreading watching this game after the Tiger Cats just absolutely worked them the week before. It just shows you how hard it is to beat a team twice in a row. It is really not that easy to do. And I know the Alouettes were really fired up at home, and that really helps with the home opener. But they just got off to a very, very quick start and didn't look back, really. They just dominated them with the run.
Oh, I mean, you have William Stanback going off for 203 yards on the ground and 3 touchdowns. It's really hard to beat a team when they're rushing like that, and with it's just so easy to control the clock and run over Hamilton basically and wear that defense down.
And I know people are really going to laugh at this, but I really don't think the Alouettes have looked this good since Anthony Calvillo, when he ended up having to retire after the 2013 season. I know I had some people mention Jeff Matthews from last season. Mm-hmm. Some will probably mention Jonathan Crompton or something like that, but they have not looked this good since Calvillo. When's the last time the Alouettes actually went 5 drives in a row with a score? And they actually did that in the second half in this one. Field goal, touchdown. That has to be not since Calvillo that they've done something like that. And just a testament to that team. Because, man, the Ticats, they're no slouches. They're the favorites in the East.
Yeah, this was exactly opposite of what happened last week. The score doesn't really dictate it, but Montreal controlled this game from start to finish and it just dominated. And it looked like Hamilton just did not have an answer until late in the game, which, I mean, usually is how it plays out in the CFL when a team has a lead, unless you're playing the Riders. So, and yeah, like you said, just a completely different team on both teams are just completely different to what we've seen so far this year, for sure.
And you know what? I really just think it started in the trenches with the Montreal Alouettes. They had such a young team with I guess you can call them prospects, like John Stone and Rutherford. And I think a really fun part in this game was the Luc Brodeur-Jourdain ends up coming into the game in the first quarter, leaves the game, gets a standing O from the fans at Percival Molson. He's teary-eyed. He leaves the game. But then there's an injury, and he has to come back and play the rest of the game at center. So when he thought his career was done, he still had about 3.5 more quarters to play for the Montreal Alouettes. I just thought it was a cool moment. But what better way to get a young offensive line involved than when running the ball? So running the ball that much with Stanback really made the difference.
Well, and look at them on first down. 355 yards on 39 plays. They averaged 9.1 yards on first down. And that, you do that, it's really hard to lose a football game. Like you said, you establish the run early, you get that O-line involved, and it usually works in your favor, and it was no different Thursday.
I think the question here is that can the Alouettes do it again? They had good attendance. Percival Molson, they had a great atmosphere there. I know they reduced the capacity this year, but man, that stadium was really, really rocking, and they need to follow it up because it's happened with both Toronto and Montreal. They get good crowds, good atmosphere, and then they just they don't get it done. But putting up 36 points for that crowd, man, I would love to see that place full again and one of the crown jewels of the Canadian Football League.
That's another thing. They have to do this again. This cannot be a flash in the pan if they want people to keep coming back. And when they showed crowd shots, it looked like there was a lot of young people. And when I say young, I mean our age. or a little young. Like, it wasn't skewed as old or as older as it's made out to be when we talk about crowd demographics in the CFL.
I think one of the big things here is that the Ticats just weren't in sync at all. And I know it's weird to say because Jeremiah Mazzoli still threw for 400 yards, and it's just so tough to limit a guy like Brandon Banks. He came out here, and I know he had 87 yards receiving. And, when another receiver has 87 yards, you're going to say, oh, that was a good day. I think he had a really good game. But Brandon Banks, it's almost like anything less than 100, you've done something right as a defense. So, yeah, he has been the absolute man with the Ticats since June Jones started him on the offense. So the fact that the Owls limited him was huge.
Yeah, under 100 yards. They kept him out of the end zone. And I think the biggest part, like you said, the offense didn't look like it was in sync. I mean, Sean Thomas-Erlington out early in this one. He only rushed it once. Their leading rusher was Anthony Coombs, and he rushed the ball 6 times for 51 yards. They just seemed that, like you said, out of sync, and maybe just Sean Thomas. I'm guessing the game plan was probably to get Thomas-Erlington the ball and try to run it down Montreal's throat to set up everything else, and then you gotta adapt on the fly there when he goes down there early. I
gotta think that the Tiger Cats are probably happy that they've gone Canadian at running back. I just feel so bad for Sean Thomas-Erlington. He had 80 to 90 friends and family there. He did his college football in Montreal. He was born there.
Yeah.
But they also have depth. A Canadian at running back. Malik Irons comes in. I know he didn't do much in this game, but Anthony Coombs rolled in, and he had himself a game. And he comes in, he gets himself, about 60 yards rushing, right? Yeah, he had himself 51 yards rushing, but he had 61 yards receiving. So look at that. His first game as a Hamilton Tiger Cat, and he's got over 100 all-purpose yards. You got to think that Toronto would be able to find a use for that, no?
Oh, Toronto needs a lot of help. A bigger end zone would help too, but we'll get to that later.
Yes, we will. I got to wonder if Jalen Acklin is a legitimate second option or even a third option in Hamilton, because Brandon Banks, you can't argue with that. Making his return to the roster this week was Luke Tasker, who had 6 catches for 58 yards. But Jalen Acklin led everyone. He was $2,500 on TSN CFL Fantasy, but 8 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown. I think he literally got half of my points in CFL Fantasy this week, which is not good, but the Tigats are going to, I think, welcome that option to the receiving core.
Yeah, for sure. When you got guys like Tasker and Banks ahead of them, it can be a little tough to get looks. And then if Braylon Addison's healthy, he just knocks him that further down the depth chart. But you come out, like you said, 8 and 10 for 120 and a touchdown. It's a pretty good showing, and a chance. He got a chance, and he killed it. He capitalized on the opportunity and showed what he could do, and it turned out real well. And like you said, he had half your points. He had 26 fantasy points on Thursday night, which is not bad if you're the number 3 option, number 3 option on the depth chart. But I mean, he was targeted 10 times, so him and Banks got the brunt of the work for the offense.
Now I just got to take time to talk about Chris Frey Jr., who was really playing his ass off at the end of the game, trying to be the special teams hero for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. It was in the final minutes or near the end of the game when he almost recovered the onside kick. It was just unfortunate. He almost made a great play there when he batted the ball out of the bounds, making sure that the Ticats would get the ball back, but he did step out of bounds first, and he couldn't do that. And then the defense makes a stop. And you kind of wondered, well, let's see what he's going to do here. And he made himself, or he redeemed himself a little bit by blocking the punt. But the new rule, the way it is, he bumped into the kicker, causing a roughing the kicker penalty. I know it's the rule,
but it's stupid.
Yeah, I don't know what a guy's supposed to do. He jumped. It's not like it was malicious and he just hammered the kicker or anything. And I know the call had to be made, but I just think everybody would have liked to have seen the Ticats have the opportunity to send this game to overtime.
Well, and we've seen it the last couple of years where kickers are leaving their leg up after they punt to try to get this call. As far as I'm concerned, if you touch the ball, as long as you're not, like you see in the NBA, sliding under the guy when he's in the air, he didn't do that. So as far as I'm concerned, this rule is stupid. I understand why it's there. I get, like, the plant leg is very vulnerable. I mean, it's an easy way to blow out a knee or whatever, but this is football.
Now, coming into the season, Delvin Breaux was hyped up more than just about any other cornerback in the Canadian Football League. There was the TSN Top 50 players that came out just before the season started, and he was in the top 10. And most of the time, cornerbacks don't get this kind of respect, but we've seen it so far this season, where the Riders picked on him in the first game of the season, and I kind of wondered if that was just because they had the rookies in there. Isaac Harker had no problem throwing the ball in Delvin Breaux's direction, but they had no problem throwing the ball in his direction in this game either. And the problem is that Breaux was giving up penalties. It was in the second quarter, he ended up giving up a pass interference penalty. And then, let's see here, he gave up another pass interference penalty in the fourth quarter. That was a 26-yard one. So teams are throwing his way. I know he was kind of considered there, and I know Marshall, again, is hurt for the Riders, but he was considered one of the best in the league. He's had a rough start so far.
You look at it, they had 179 yards in penalties, and you would think that that's going to be tough to win a football game. Well, Montreal had 154. So I mean, both teams shot themselves in the foot penalty wise. I mean, Montreal probably could have been up more without all the penalties they took, and then maybe this last minute and a half doesn't even matter, but. But the two penalties at the end of the game are the ones that are going to stand out the most, and it's just a timing thing. But Like, yeah, it says I hate that rule. I think it's dumb. I think if you get the ball, it's the same with pass interference. If the ball's tipped at the line, you can basically knock down the receiver, right? It doesn't matter anymore. I just don't understand why. I get that the plant leg's vulnerable, but what's a guy supposed to do? He's diving. Like you said, he cannot change where he's going to go. And it doesn't help that the defender at the same time, or not the defender, sorry, the lineman is still trying to push him and, get him out of the kicking lane, and that doesn't help, and then it becomes unpredictable, and this is what happens, and the rule is dumb. I think they need to change it back or just change it to if you get a piece of the ball, then you're not gonna, as long as it's not malicious or you're not sliding underneath the foot of the kicker so he can't land, because that's a good way to tear an ankle apart, then there should be no flag. But it sucks because it looked so good, it looked so promising, and then you get the flag, and I just thought it was a flag for no yards because the Montreal cover guy caught the ball, and then it ends up being roughing the kicker, and at that point I just turned the TV off.
Well, on to the next game where the Winnipeg Blue Bombers absolutely dominate the Ottawa Red Blacks 29-14. I think the Red Blacks coming off the bye, but the Bombers have won their last few games in Ottawa here, and there was no Adam Bighill here, but Dom Davis coming off the bye against his old team. Who is he? I think he had a lot of expectations coming into this one. I know it's early in the season. It's technically his first year as a starter, but who is he?
I think we basically saw him on Friday night. I think the first two games are those outliers. You're never as good as you are when you're at your best. You're never as bad as you are when you're at your worst. You're somewhere in the middle. He didn't have his best game. He didn't have his worst game that I've seen him play on Friday night. 21 for 36 for 234 through 2 picks. Only the one rushing attempt. 5.6 fantasy points. Thanks for the 5.6 fantasy points. I still won the week, but man, that's terrible.
Oh man, you did win your Canadian Football Podcast Network Fantasy Challenge because...
Yes, I did. I don't know how.
I had an absolutely brutal week. I scored less than 60, but there were some other rough scores in the network, actually.
And we both, did we not both have Sean Thomas Erlington?
Well, you know what? I think 98% of CFL fantasy players had Sean Thomas Erlington. He was just putting up some office or great numbers here, but you end up beating Superfan Mike. I end up losing to Sheldon from Horseman Radio. He beat me by just under 30 points. So I had 2 zeros because I had Shaq Evans in there as well. Coming up, it's you versus me. So we're head-to-head this week. I'm looking forward to that. But, man, I just think due to some of the injuries here, some of the players that we weren't expecting to do well, like I'm talking Quan Bray in Montreal, I guess Jalen Acklin in Hamilton, there were just some rough weeks across the league due to the injuries. I guess we can call them less than average weeks.
Average is a polite way to put it, yeah.
You know what? In this game, I think what was crazy about it is that Ottawa had an opportunity, all the opportunity in the world, to win the game and dominate Winnipeg's front seven here because Adam Bighill wasn't in there. But they give Moses Madu, four carries, 6 carries, something like that? What are they thinking?
Especially with this Bomber defense, and we've talked about for the last couple of years, they're not the easiest to throw against. It's a little different now, but if you're only going to rush the ball 8 times, you're basically beating yourself. They rushed the ball for 8 times for 24 yards. What is that? Like, what are you doing? That makes zero sense. You have 258 total offensive yards in a game. You're not going to win that football game. And they, like you said, they had an opportunity with Adam Bighill out for Moses Madu to do some damage, only giving the ball 6 times. Granted, he was only averaging 3 yards a carry, but you got to keep giving him the rock and hit this defense in the teeth and try to get them to back off. And because they didn't do that, they're able to sit back on the pass and just wait. Dom Davis throws 2 picks, and they lose by 2 scores.
Well, and another thing, you texted me, Matt Nichols himself had over 200 yards in the first half. He barely got that, if he got that, in previous weeks. And he just looked great. He ended up leaving the game in the second half after a pretty hard hit. So I think Bomber fans are going to want him to be okay. I know Strevler comes with a little bit of hype. I think on the prairies, if you're a backup quarterback, everybody loves you. But you did text me, who is this quarterback? And what did he do with Matt Nichols after that big reception to Nick Dembski, who had over 100 yards on the game?
When did Winnipeg start throwing downfield? Like, what is this?
You know what? I think we can look at this Bombers roster, too, and just talk about all the weapons that they have. I know a lot of people were excited to take Lucky Whitehead in this one, but he had one catch for 16 yards. So if it's not Lucky Whitehead, it's, Drew Wolodarski, or it's, Chris Matthews, who hasn't had a big game yet. Or it's Nick Dembski, or it's
Darvin Adams. Like, they have all the weapons right now, and we both thought with Big Hill out, this was a chance for Ottawa to stay undefeated. They're going to be able to run the ball, they're going to be able to set stuff up off of the run, and they do none of that. And like with all the weapons we just listed off, they didn't even bring up Andrew Harris. and they still have Chris Matthews, who's still going to draw attention, right? So, I mean, this is probably the most complete team in the league right now, and they're fun to watch, and they showed that they are legit. And we kind of had questions with them missing Big Hill, but they didn't skip a beat.
And you know what? Yeah, Andrew Harris really did get involved here. He had the 80 yards on the ground, but he also added the 50 through the air. So it's like, I mean, if you stop Harris, then they've got these other weapons, and Winnipeg has never been able to say that. You either shut down Harris and you shut down the whole team, and really it's just like neither got shut down here.
No, and they have such great balance in their offense with all of Darvin Adams, Lucky Whitehead, Nick Dembski, Chris Matthews, who's still going to draw the attention, like I was saying, Drew Wolodarski, Andrew. Everybody brings a little something different to the table, and like you see that guys like Lucky Whitehead can get in behind coverage. Dembski can run out of the backfield when you need him to, and make the possession catches. And you got Chris Matthews, who's a big-bodied receiver. Darvin Adams, who can make those plays when you need him to. It's just no matter where Matt Nichols is going with the ball. He threw for 80% on Friday night. That is ridiculous. It just seems every time he throws the ball, it's usually a high percentage throw. And, he throws it into a spot where only his guy can get it. And these guys just make play after play, and they're winning football games. It's fun to watch. Another
thing here is that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers were just another team that just dominated the time of possession. It almost seemed like a theme this week. Just over 39 minutes. Man, you just can't allow that to happen.
They basically had it for 67% of the game.
I saw this thrown around, and I got to ask you this. Who currently has the best secondary in the CFL?
Is Trey Roberson on his own?
Okay, yeah. I think Trey Roberson right now could probably beat anyone
by himself, right?
What about Ottawa? Antoine Pruneau, Anthony Chaffee, Sherrod Baltimore. Yeah, they've got some playmakers. Oh, Jonathan Rose, say what you want about him.
Oh, yeah.
I think the big problem with the defense right now, if there is one, they're just inconsistent when it comes to pressuring the quarterback. I really like Avery Williams, who actually had 8 tackles in this one. I think J.R. Tavai has a lot of potential here. He had 6 tackles himself, and they do have Jonathan Newsom. I do like these guys, but if they could, get to the quarterback more, and pressure the quarterback more. And I know that's probably tough to do with Matt Nichols and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But if they could get more pressure on the quarterback, they might be a top 3rd defense in this league.
Oh, for sure. And getting pressure is such a huge part for your secondary, not giving that quarterback time, and he's more apt to make mistakes if you can get to him early. And, they're just not getting that. They didn't get that pressure at all, it seemed. On Friday night, I don't think. Yeah, they had 2 sacks, or one sack. Sorry, 1 sack. Like, if you're not going to get to the quarterback, you're going to make it really hard on yourself to win. You're putting a lot of pressure on your secondary. And, I mean, I know Matt Nichols left the game, but Strevler comes in and goes 6 for 8 for 42 with a touchdown and a pick. I mean, they threw for 404 yards, or 304 yards, which, I mean, it's anything over 300 is usually a pretty good night. And, you know, Ottawa just had no answer, and they couldn't stop them. It can't get pressure. It's really hard. It puts so much pressure on your secondary to step up and make plays, and just play after play, getting thrown at like that. You know, when the quarterback has so much time, it makes it really hard on the defense.
Oh, and you know what? Another thing here, he didn't have a running game, Dom Davis, and the receivers didn't help him at all. I know there were Dominic Rhymes. He had himself another little nice game here. He had himself, let's see here. He had 6 catches for 58 yards. R.J. Harris had 6 catches for 87. But guess what? Brad Sinopoli, 1 catch for 8 yards. It seems like you slow him down and challenge the other inexperienced receivers to make plays. I know Caleb Hawley's getting a bigger opportunity here with the Red Blacks. He had some costly drops here, and you know, a lot of the receivers had costly drops. And Caleb Hawley had 4 catches for 39 yards.
No, and a quarterback, I mean, when they only run the ball
Davis
8
needs all
times,
the support in the world.
The quarterback's thrown it 36 times. You know, you need to make those plays for your quarterback. It's much like in hockey. You show me a good goaltender, I'll show you a good coach. You know, if your receivers are dropping the balls, they're going to make your quarterback look so bad.
I think one more thing on this game. How about Justin Medlock's big play? He struggled in this one. He missed 2 field goals, and that's not very common from a guy like Justin Medlock. But there was a play in the second half when he punted the ball. Ryan Langford, former Blue Bomber, kind of just let it sit there. But Medlock rocketed down the field and booted the ball out of bounds, which means that it is Winnipeg ball inside Ottawa's 10. You don't usually see that from Medlock.
Not from Medlock. No, you don't see him. You know, he's no Jamie Borum.
I love that play.
You know, in the middle of everything. You know, but lost in this, because they lost the football game, is Lewis Ward. 2 for 2. When they kicked that 53-yarder, I'm like, oh boy, here we go. Dead straight, dead middle. He's at the streak's at 59 now because he hit 2. Every kick now is a record breaker. So I mean, Rod Black can have a heyday with that if he ever calls an Ottawa game.
Can he get to 100 and just miss his next kick?
Travis.
Well, some men just like to watch the world burn.
If he gets a streak to 99, his career percentage will be 99%.
This episode of Two and Out is brought to you in part by the Alberta Blue Cross Wellness Summit happening October 10th at the Renaissance Edmonton Airport Hotel. All the information at wellnesssummit.ca. They've got all sorts of great keynote speakers this year. It is just awesome. And I keep talking about him, Drew Dudley, who did a TED Talk. It's like 6 minutes long. It's all about lollipop moments, talking on how you can be a leader and how you can have an influence on someone's life. Just doing everyday awesome things. It's like 6 minutes long. You should really just Google Drew Dudley and lollipop moments. You'll feel really good, and it'll put a lot of things into perspective here. But this year, the focus on the summit is on what it takes to create a healthy workplace culture where everybody in the building absolutely thrives. And I think the really cool thing about this summit is that you don't just sit there with your pen and paper and listen to these speakers talk and then you go on your well way. You get to make some connections. You get to network a little bit. You get to chat face to face with these amazing speakers and really learn face to face. There's nothing better than making that personal connection there. So learn more about the Alberta Blue Cross Wellness Summit happening at the Renaissance Edmonton Airport Hotel October 10th. All that information is at the wellnesssummit.ca, the wellnesssummit.ca. Well, our next game was just an interesting game with the Lions beating the Argos 18-17. I'm just seeing the stat sheet here. I don't think it's true, but it actually says 0 people were at the game.
Yeah.
Well, and you know what? the side that the camera's on always looks more full, but the other side just looks hot. It was 27 degrees at the game, and I think those people sitting on that side just cook.
How do you do it? I don't understand how people like right now in my condo it's 25.5 degrees and I am leaking.
Oh no, what happened to your AC, man?
It's broken.
Ooh.
Getting it fixed on Friday.
Okay, that's good.
But see, I'm on the road. Well, hopefully starting Tuesday. So then I make sure my hotel room has AC. It's the first thing I do when I get into a hotel room. Turn it all the way down to 16. So as I'm unloading the truck, it's not too bad, right?
16 degrees, man.
Yeah.
I put it at 19, and I think I'm actually pretty cold. I think a big thing here is that the Mike Riley and Lamar Durant connection. Durant continues his streak. He has a touchdown in every single game so far.
And good for 27.5 points. Like you said, it keeps the streak alive. And we figured coming in against this Toronto defense that, we could load up on BC Lions in fantasy, and I kind of did. I had Durant and John White and Duron Carter, who, 4.7 points. I guess it's not the worst he's ever had. But, yeah, 9 catches on 11. It's thrown to 11 times. White, Kotoy, and Carter got targeted 4 each, and that was the next closest to Lamar Durant. So he's becoming a Mike Riley favorite for sure, it looks like.
I think everybody expected Duron Carter to come out and have a big one in this one because Brian Burnham was not playing. I think I expected anyway, Mike Riley to have a big game against the Argo defense. But Corey Chamberlain, he had him prepared in this one. He had him playing some decent football to limit the Lions as much as they could. I know that the John White ended up having over 100 yards on the ground again, having a good game, and the Lions controlled the clock and the time of possession again. But the Lions, they actually started 4 Canadian receivers, 8 overall on offense. I think it's been a long time since we've seen a CFL team do that. Maybe the Riders that were making the Grey Cups in 2009 and 2010.
Mm-hmm. With the Canadian Air Force, and you usually have at least 3 of them on the offensive line. To start 4 Canadian receivers, I thought right away, I'm like, I don't want to crap on the Canadian receivers, but that might be a saving grace for Toronto. Like a lot of these guys, like Rashawn Simonides has never really turned into to a first round pick like he was, right? I believe he was a first-round pick.
I'm not sure if he was a first-round pick, but he was with the Bengals. He in Cincinnati. He definitely had an NFL pedigree.
There was big things expected from Rashawn Simonides, and that hasn't panned out. And then you have Lamar Durant, who was kind of buried on the depth chart in Calgary, but this year is kind of a coming out for him, being paired with Mike Riley and being an integral part of that receiving core. A lot of guys that haven't played a lot in this league, starting at receiver for BC, and I thought that'll be Toronto's only chance. They couldn't get it done, but Durant comes out and has the game he does, and then Kotoy there with 44 as the next leading receiver for BC. Mike he spread the ball around, but he really targeted it on Durant. And like you said, most outstanding Canadian, if he keeps this up, definitely within reach.
You know what? And I think this game was all about special teams and is all on the Toronto Argonauts here. Yep. The kicker, Drew Brown, he had just a rough game. I know everybody's going to blame the last play, but they ended up missing a field goal at the end of the first half, so there's points off the board there. They botched an extra point, so there's another point off the board there. And we want to talk about Chris Rainey on special teams, which was good and bad. And I know we'll get to the last play there, but he ended up having a return, I think a 79-yarder for a touchdown. There was another play when he looked like he was going to have a nice return and then ran into a brick wall called Jordan Herdman Reed, and the ball went flying about 30 yards. And I think the Argos ended up recovering it, but man, he got smashed.
Yeah, that produced a ooh at BP's on Saturday night. It was like, oh, yeah, he just got lit. up, and it did not look like it tickled.
And I hate to, go back to the Drew Brown thing, but man, that was one of the poorest games I've seen from a kicker in a long time. I mean, the Lions probably shouldn't have had an opportunity to win this game before overtime, but the Argos go to kick it off, and he kicks it out of bounds. They had a legal kick. So you honestly, less than a minute left, and you give the Lions great field position here. What the saddest thing is you have a 65-yard field. That's how wide it is, and you kick it out of bounds. All you needed to do was kick it deep. It didn't really matter where it went. Just get it deep.
I don't even do that on Madden.
Like, are there no other kickers? I mean, they gotta find some guys here, considering how many they brought to camp.
They brought more kickers than they brought running backs into camp, and they had a crap load of running backs. And this is the guy you picked.
I'm kind of curious as to why Josh Bartell hasn't gotten a call. He was with the Riders last year. I know he kind of divides Rider Nation a little bit on what he is, but I think Bartell's better than what they're doing right now. It's just not working. And, with the Argos, and we're talking about their struggle with finding a kicker, which actually has continued for a little while now, but the Lions can't find an American receiver. They say that, some of these receivers and running backs, they're kind of a bit of a dime a dozen. You're not going to find the special ones, every offseason. That's understandable. But the Lions, I think they had to start 4 Canadians because they're better than the Americans on the roster, which on one hand, yeah, that's good. But on the other hand, man, there is just no depth behind Burnham and Carter. And, well, let's just throw Durant into that class now, too. There's no other receivers that can get it done there. But they couldn't find anybody. No American receivers to go behind Burnham and Carter.
No, but, I mean, for now it's working. And, I mean, I think they would have been in this situation even with Emmanuel Arsenault there if he would have stuck around, because we don't see him really, I don't want to say do anything, but we don't see him become a force until after Labor Day. And I don't know what it is, but it just seems before Labor Day he's just not, I don't know if, I don't think it's that he's out of shape or anything like that. I don't know if something clicks or if he just starts making the adjustments he needs to. But, I mean, I think they still would have been in this position even with him there, at least at this point in the year. But, yeah, like you said, they're supposed to be the easiest things to find out there, and they got nobody. I mean, there was lots of guys on the market, and they end up, they got Lamar Durant, and it's working out with Mike Riley right now. I don't know how long it's going to last, but if Carter's only getting targeted 4 times for 27 yards, and when Burnham goes out, it leaves such a big hole in the receivers there. That can be really hard to overcome. I think the one thing though is that they were playing Toronto, so it's not, the hole isn't as magnified as it will be, when they come up against the Calgary, like we saw. Couldn't hold on to the lead last week there. They go, to Ottawa, and like we just talked about, their secondary and the guys they have up there. They need to find some American depth at the receiver position for sure. With Mike Riley's able to hide a lot. I don't know how long he's going to be able to hide this.
And doesn't that last play when Sergio Castillo goes for the win sum up Toronto's season?
More or less, yep, I think so. I think that pretty much puts a stamp on it that this team is going 0 for 18.
I totally thought I was going 0 for 3 for Pick'em.
And then I'm sweating bullets because I bet the farm on the Lions.
But you know what? I do have to give credit to Chris Rainey. He did own it in the post-game interview, and it's the rule the way it is. But let's face it, if that kick doesn't go out of bounds, if the Argos make a field goal, make an extra point, they are not in that situation. That one play didn't lose them the game. It's just the way the rule is right now. I don't know what Rainey could have done, but if they've got 2 extra yards, this game is going overtime if it's at BC Place.
I mean, I don't know what Chris Rainey's supposed to do there. He's already pretty close to the line. He can't let that ball go out. He has to make a play on it. He has to. Maybe the only thing I could think would be to like jump and maybe bat it back in and then come and get it. But then you're running a lot of risk with that. So I have zero problem. And yeah, he made a mistake. He took one too many steps. But I mean, he has to. You can't let that ball go out. You can't drop that ball. Well, you can, but I mean, you don't want to bring that into play with guys bearing down on you there. So it sucks for him. But like you said, he owned it in the post game. And yeah, two extra yards. Like that end zone's supposed to be, and this isn't even an issue, and he probably just punts it out, and we go to overtime.
Well, yeah, you know what? When that those two defenders ran into each other in the Saskatchewan game, and Kyron Moore ends up scoring a 98-yard touchdown.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. It's almost as good as a couple years ago. I can't remember who Saskatchewan was playing, but they were running a post route. And the DB ran, it might have been against Winnipeg, the DB ran smack dab into the goalpost.
Yeah, it's an extra defender back there.
And receiver was wide open, right? Obviously.
And you know what, I kind of do have to mention James Wilder Jr. for all we've mentioned him negatively this season. He had some great receiving yards here in this game. He had 76 of them, a touchdown and 7 catches.
Well, and James Wilder Jr., that was good for 23.9 points fantasy-wise. Chris Rainey at 14.9. I mean, James Wilder was third in running backs this week for fantasy. And guys like Armani Edwards and Levi Noel are really stepping up when Darrell Walker's not having the year that we would think, but at the same time, his quarterbacks aren't as good as what he had in Edmonton. So it's a lot of work for him to. I mean, he only got targeted 3 times, and SJ Green targeted 8 times. They only caught 3 of them. So. I mean, there's a lot going on in Toronto that needs to be looked at. Behind center, I think, is the biggest issue. I don't know. James Wilder, it's hard for a running back to be effective when teams can just pin their ears back and they know, that if he's involved in the play, that they can just go after him because the quarterback situation is not one to be desired in Toronto right now.
I don't even know where to start with this last game of the week, but the Calgary Stampeders dominate the Riders 37-10.
This game forced me to drink.
I think one of the big worries in this one for the Calgary Stampeders, I don't think anybody thought Nick Arbuckle would have a bad game. He's been in the system for 3 years. He's been behind Bo Mitchell for 3 years and Dave Dickinson. He's been in that system, and he made plays in the preseason. He made plays, last week, as recent as last week, but they were really banged up coming into this game, and I think people thought the Riders would be able to control this one. As far as the Riders go, I think the worry was that they were injured too. There's injuries on the O-line, and Nick Marshall wasn't able to play in this one. Shaq Evans ended up leaving the game, another 0 for my fantasy team. Brett Lowther, Christian Jones, they were all hurt in this one. But the worry was that, they just played on Monday, then they have to go play again on Saturday. That being said, we just talked about a team in the Toronto Argonauts that were in the exact same situation, except they had to travel back to Toronto and play BC in that one. And I know they lost, but they did compete with BC a lot better than Saskatchewan competed with Calgary. I think, every team has been able to run on Calgary so far, that the Riders would be able to run it down their throat, but there was none of that happening in this one.
No, William Powell, 14 carries, 50 yards. Thigpen had 3. Fajardo rushed 6 times. They just shut down the running game so quick, it seemed, that just nothing could come of it. And they only threw the ball 28 times. Like, they did not have the ball for very. I mean, they won the time of possession, but it just seemed like the possessions were so ineffective, and obviously they were. They only scored 9 points, but I mean, when your two quarterbacks are throwing 15 and 13 passes respectively, and you're only 23 rush attempts, I mean, that you're not using your time very effectively.
Well, it looked like the Stampeder defense, they were prepared. They're well coached. They're always well coached. But they wanted to take away that deep throw from Cody Fajardo because that's what he did so well against Toronto. That's what he did so well against Ottawa. They just had a great deep ball. But the Stamps, they just took it away and dared them to beat them underneath and dink and dunk their way down the field.
Twice by Trey Roberson.
I do have to mention Solomon Means on defense, who looked very
inept. Yeah,
he just had an absolutely brutal game back there, and I think the Stampeder game plan was probably to pick on him a little bit. I know Nick Marshall was hurt, but they really picked on Means here. I don't know what it was, if the Riders were looking ahead to the bye week or something like that. I mean, but back to Means, you want to talk about penalties. Oh, the Riders, after halftime, they have a big return from Luchez Purifoy. It was, 15-3 at halftime, and then the Rider offense is able to finish that drive. It's 15-10. All of the momentum in the world, and they pin Calgary deep. Calgary has to start a drive in their own 2-yard line after a penalty there. And then Solomon Means ends up taking a 40-yard pass interference penalty. A few plays later, the Stamps are in the end zone, and it's 22-10. And it just kind of looks like the game is out of reach there. But Means, he had an illegal contact earlier in the game. He had another pass interference earlier in the game. He just had a rough night with penalties. And I know the bye week's coming up. He might be worried. I mean, he had a rough game. And if you got a Canadian in Buka and Means is getting burned like that, why not just throw the Canadian in there?
And it's only one play, but it was a play that just cost them so much, and he becomes the scapegoat, which sucks. But it wasn't the only play that lost them this football game. There's lots of other opportunities and people to blame, not just putting it all on one guy.
I got to say, this is probably tough for you to hear because you have been a big Jones hater over your career on the Two and Out podcast, but I think Jones would have had this team prepared. He always had them prepared for West Division teams. I know Calgary came to town last year and they got out to a 24-0 lead, and the Riders ended up fighting back after that. But in general, against West teams, Chris Jones had the team ready. I think they're missing him on defense.
That is very true, because this defense looks nothing like. I shouldn't say nothing. It's just not a Chris Jones defense, and it's just so obvious compared to what we saw the last couple of years.
Yeah, I know there were some losses. Willie Jefferson, Sam Aguavin,
Toby Antigua, but
they still have the playmakers: Charleston Hughes, Zach Evans, Nick Marshall. And there's another thing. Solomon Elimimian's a game player. I mean, he's a legend in the CFL. He's a BC Lions legend, but he looked like he hadn't played for a year. But you know what? He actually didn't play for a year.
Yeah, so there's that.
I think a massive thing here, and I've already talked about Nick Arbuckle a little bit. But if you put the 19 on him, and he stood back in the pocket, I don't think you would have batted an eye of that. 19 of 22 for 262 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had a perfect passer rating. The guy came in and just looked like he belonged on that offense.
Well, and if this is what Nick Arbuckle did, in 2 weeks, what's Mike Riley going to do to this defense if it's the same?
Yeah, I think Shivers is going to need to send the heat after Riley, just like Edmonton did.
Yeah, with everything they got, because you have to put. We know he's going to take a hit and get back up, but you need to keep hitting him, and eventually he's not going to get. I know I don't mean he's not going to get back up, but he's going to get back up, and he's just not going to be as effective. And we've seen that O-line in BC not be that great. So I mean, there has to be changes, because Nick Arbuckle's throwing for 262 and only 3 incompletions. Mike Riley is going to do more than that. I don't even think it's a question.
I thought the O-line played okay. I know Cofield is out and Labatt is out, but Vaughn played all right at left tackle. Thad Coleman, I thought he struggled at right tackle. And Dakota Shepley, I think he continues to get good. He was looking good at guard, but they were the only team that has not been able to run the ball on the Stampeders. And I think that's because they didn't establish the run early. They decided to go with passing plays, and time of possession in the first quarter was just a joke. I think the Riders had less than 3 minutes time of possession in the first quarter, and it just got away from them, and they couldn't commit to the run after that. But those early choices, I think, the consequences were felt later on.
No, and that's why we both kind of thought William Powell's going to have a big night, and he only ends up with the 50 rushing yards and the 1 reception. Calgary came to play, and it just seemed like Saskatchewan had no answer. And now our 5th place projection is starting to look like it makes a little bit of sense. And I think we kind of felt like that when Collaros went down early in the year. The last 2 games for Fajardo kind of gave us a little bit of hope, and he snatched it right back. I mean, 89 yards from your starter is not going to go well, and Harker comes in and throws 72. They both turn the ball over. It just nothing seemed to work, and like I said, they didn't commit to the run early, which puts even more pressure on the quarterbacks, and it just snowballed from there.
It just blows my mind that they couldn't get up for Calgary. I know the 5 days, but the intensity and preparation, it just needs to be there for the West games.
Well, it's a 4-point game, right? You can't dig yourself a hole against your division. It makes it so much harder to dig out of when you get later on in the year, and the football gets so much tougher. Like you said, the defense at least always seemed to be, especially last year. The defense won them those 12 games. It felt like, and every week in and week out, they showed up. We knew what we were getting with the defense. We weren't sure what Collaros was going to offer Brandon Bridge when he was in. But you knew coming in the defense was going to be ball hawking and trying to get after the quarterback and getting the pressure. And now it's just completely different. They seemed, I don't want to say unprepared, because I know that's not true. They're professional athletes. They would have had meetings all week and practices, but I don't know if the intensity was there.
And a guy I got to mention from Calgary, I just love that Fraser Sopik. He had a quarterback sack. He had five tackles. Like, that guy's a real football player.
Okay, Buck Martinez, calm down.
Don't make fun. You know what? I can't. I'd feel so guilty if I let this podcast go without mentioning Mike Miller. That special teamer for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I think he tied the CFL record, 7 special teams tackles, and he just brings that lunch pail to work. He plays hard. I think he had a catch too.
This guy does not much on any aspect of the game other than special teams, and I freaking love him for it. It's like, yeah, you're definitely from Saskatchewan then.
Come on, that guy's having dinner on the tailgate of the truck in the field of wheat at 1 o'clock. Yeah, I said dinner at 1 p.m.
Because dinner's at noon. All you weirdos that have dinner at 6 o'clock, it's pretty late.
What did you make of Craig Dickinson's calls out there? There was one where I think they were down 3 scores. He kicks the field goal, and they were still down 3 scores, and then taking Cody Fajardo out of the game for Isaac Harper.
Yeah, I don't get that really.
I know he wasn't getting anything done, but
the field goal, no. The field goal, it's whatever. You know you're not winning this football game, so just take the points and try to save some dignity, maybe. I don't know. This whole game was just, after the first half, it just felt like the game was over. And it was 15-3, and then we just were like, well, this game is over. Right, Saskatchewan had nothing. I think the boys are already dressed and ready to go. Before the fourth quarter, before the siren went to end the game, I think they were ready to go out and just put this is a game that I don't even know if you really want to watch the tape. I think you burn it and you forget it and you move on, because you got 2 weeks to get ready for BC. You're gonna have lots of film to look at, and I think this game you just put it in your back pocket, forget about it, and move on to the next one, because it was that bad.
I think the highlight of this game was some members of the St. Louis Blues showing up at the Stanley Cup at Mosaic Stadium. That got a great ovation. It was such a great moment to be in the stadium for that.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, at least somebody from Saskatchewan won something.
Well, I'd love to drink Pilsner out of the cup.
You'd drink Pilsner out of a shoe if they got you.
Oh, and how about Gainer. They showed the video. He's ditched the green contacts. I don't think I've ever seen a sports mascot make a modification after 1 week.
That might be
did it
the
with Gainer.
real highlight of the night.
Okay.
You know that.
The real highlight of the night happened in the men's bathroom.
Okay. Somebody slide their foot under the stall door and tap you, or what happened here?
No, you're not even going to believe what happened in there. So I walk in there. It was the perfect time. Like, all the urinals were empty. So I went to the one in the corner.
Please tell me somebody came in and went to the urinal right next to you.
Yes, right next to me. But there's totally more to this. You're not going to believe this. So I'm in the corner. A guy right next to me goes. And it was inevitable. They're probably all going to fill up anyway. But then another guy walks in. They're clearly buddies. Or at least I think they are. Maybe more. And the guy says, hey, you want to share a urinal?
There's the...
So they did.
Oh, my God.
What do you say?
Why?
It was a crazy moment in the bathroom.
Man.
I mean, everybody's in there laughing.
The golf tournament, we had to pull the bus over on the way back to Saskatoon, so all the guys could get off the bus to go to use the bathroom. Just 16 dudes lined up in the ditch, and I looked over at buddy next to me, and all I said was, nice watch. Kind of throws people for a loop right away, right? And then you just walk away. I don't think I'd ever share a urinal, though.
But come on, they had to have crossed streams.
Oh, you never cross streams. Haven't they watched Ghostbusters?
You know, I'm just glad I was able to go to that game with my dad. I crushed some pierogies. He had some hot dogs. We just had a great time at Mosaic Stadium, despite the stinking Stampeders beating the Riders again. It is Travis Currah and Brazilian Ty, a part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. I do want to send you in the direction of the podcast, The City of Champions. Shane is the host here. He interviews interesting people doing exceptional things in, I'll give you one guess as to what city it is, Ty.
I'm guessing it's Boston, considering that they have done nothing but one since 1999.
Well, come on, it's the Alberta Podcast Network. He talks to people that do art, business, sports, and more. I believe the past couple episodes have been some city councilors in Edmonton. But then back in May, he talked to Ken Lowe, who has spent his career in pro sports as an athletics therapist. He was with the Eskimos in 1982, a part of 2 Grey Cup champions. And then in 1989, he moved over to the Edmonton Oilers, winning the Stanley Cup in his first year with the team, and he has been there for 30 years. So check out the City of Champions podcast, as well as all the other great shows in the Alberta Podcast Network at albertapodcastnetwork.com. We also have a partnership with Seat Giant, a Canadian-owned and operated ticketing service. Go to seatgiant.ca. All the dollars there in Canadian funds. That's the best part. You go to some of these other places, and then you get surprised on your credit card because, it was American dollars. And we kind of get screwed when it comes to that. But if you go to Seat Giant, not only is it Canadian, you use the promo code APN at checkout. You're going to save 5% on your purchase, and you're also going to support the Alberta Podcast Network at the same time. So all the Week 5 CFL games, they're on there. If you don't have tickets yet, seatgiant.ca, promo code APN. You will save yourself 5% on your ticket order. Ty, I guess I've got some positive news about Week 5. The Riders are going to be undefeated.
If you want to look for a silver lining, that is very true. They cannot lose. They cannot lose this upcoming week.
You know me, always looking on the bright side of things. We will talk to you Thursday morning.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.